Welcome, and thank you for your interest in ExecuKeys from Informediate. I'm very happy to introduce our newest version 3.0 of ExecuKeys with enhancements to charting capabilities with multiple axes and scales and advanced color controls. Our primary purpose with ExecuKeys was to provide you with a highly configurable and personalizable dashboard so that you can decide what key performance indicators are most important to your company and how you'd like to arrange them and secure them by individual user or group. ExecuKeys was designed to run on most modern browsers, including Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari for Apple users, and Google Chrome, just to name a few. Let's begin by taking a look at various aspects of the user interface. Near the top left of the screen, you have the ability to isolate individual companies if you have multiple companies, or to look at the consolidation of all. And similarly, you can look at individual branch locations or look at the consolidation of them all. One of the key concepts in ExecuKeys is that we allow you to configure multiple tabs like web pages, each that can be secured by individual user or group. Each tab can show content from one or more data sets, and the individual objects can be any combination of charts, gauges, graphs, or grids. You can name tabs however you like, and you can have as many different tabs as you like without any limit. As I add more tabs than we see here, they'll scroll horizontally. Again, the key concept being that each tab can be secured by user or group. So you may have sensitive tabs like financials, which would be limited to certain executives and people in the accounting department, or you can have main tabs that you share across all the various segments of the organization. Let's take a look at some of the objects that we've arranged on our main tab in this presentation. In this example, I'm currently viewing the ExecuKeys dashboards on a widescreen display. So I've got plenty of room on my desktop, and I can choose how many different objects I want to display horizontally. In this particular case, I've chosen to display 3 columns horizontally on the main page. Now if I want, I can increase or decrease that to take full advantage of my screen resolution. So let's bump that up to 4 columns for a moment, and now you can see the screen re-renders that 4 columns across. Now if you're looking closely, you also may notice that I have several rows of objects on this main dashboard. And if we look at the titles of the objects, we kind of get a little bit of an indicator that we can pull data from various sources and various different types of transactions. So in this case, I have pie charts for accounts receivable invoice by aging groups, accounts payable invoices, open orders, open quotes. If I scroll down a little bit further, I've got late open POs, I've got supplier product group change analysis, I've got a grid for customer items showing what items had the top 100 growth in terms of margin and what customers bought those items. I have a chart here that shows the interplay between shrinking sales from customers to suppliers. Scrolling back to the top, we have some sales charts. In the second example, we've got a comparative time showing what branches had the biggest change in gross margin from commission costs this year to date versus last year. This is also a multi-level object, so we can drill through that from branch to sales rep to customer and so forth. We've got configurable red, yellow, green gauges. We can actually use 4 colors in gauges with configurable zones in terms of how you define the hot spots within those gauges. And then we've got multi-dimensional time drill downs as well. Let's take a closer look at our first example. Now in the 4-column presentation, there's a limited amount of screen space available to show each object. But if I simply right-click on that chart or click any data point in that chart, we'll get a full screen presentation. In this case, I'll click the View Large to isolate that first chart. This chart is designed to show a roll-up of year-to-date sales activity, and the title kind of gives you a clue on what that roll-up looks like. In this case, we're going to take a look at sales reps on the top level. Then we can choose an individual rep, drill into their customers, and then into the product groups, and then down to the items. You'll see in this example we can actually break down how many times the same customer buys the same items in terms of invoice date, and look at all the details associated with that. If we look down on the bottom, we'll see the legend, where green represents sales year to date, blue represents gross margin from a moving average cost year to date, and the orange line represents the gross margin calculated on the moving average cost year to date. If I hover over the data points, we'll see the reflection of the actual values. Now in this particular example, we've used the sales rep IDs for the dimension. We could just as easily have used names. In this case, we've stuck with the numbers merely to protect the confidentiality of the information. So in this particular example, it's easy to see that Rep 1349 leads their team with $1.8 million in sales, about 13% of the total. If I'd like to know more about that rep, I simply click on that data point and it will break down that rep's activity now at the customer level. I have a clear indication of that. If I look at my header, we can now see that we've isolated that particular rep, in this example 1349, and we're now looking at the customer level. So we can see now that this particular rep gets almost half of his sales from one customer and a little more than half the margin from that same customer. If we'd like to find out more about what products that customer is buying, we can click on one of those data points. Now we'll drill down to the product group level. In this case, this particular customer prefers shear walls above all others. If we drill into shear walls, we'll find what items that customer buys in that segment. And then if we click into that item, we'll find out how many times the customer buys that same item number. Now in this particular case, looking at a chart loses some of its meaning in that example. So one of the great features that our executives and users love is the ability to toggle between chart and grid at any level. Now that I'm in the grid view, I could easily resort by any of the columns. This particular distributor was very interested in how often their customers buy the same products multiple times a week, because the distributor used their own trucks for delivery or pay freight. So if the customer's ordering the same products multiple times a week, at the very least there's a waste of shipping expense, not to mention the associated waste in fulfillment expense. So if they can incent the customers to consolidate their orders, there could be savings on both sides of the equation, and some of that savings can possibly be passed on to the customer. So it looks at a quick glance that we do see that problem multiple times in this brief period. Now a bigger problem that became apparent was if we take a look at the gross margin percentage column, you can notice that early in the year this product was selling at above a 30% margin, then began to erode, and when we get to late March and then to April, the product erodes all the way down to less than a 12% margin. Naturally, that's a very disturbing pattern and something that we'd want to get on top of immediately. So my guess is what happened here is the supplier increased the price of this item, and that cost was not passed on to the customer, and therefore the distributor lost 15 to 20% margin in the last month or so's worth of sales. So that would be a very significant problem. Now one of the great things, again, aside from being able to sort on columns just by double clicking, is we can also filter columns by clicking on the funnel. And you can choose specific values or you can filter on the fly. So in this example, let's say we were looking for anywhere where margin is less than 25%. So I'll type in that value, apply the filter, now I have my short list. Now if I right click again, I can easily export that as an Excel or a PDF file and therefore delegate responsibility, have somebody else investigate, or create a reminder to myself of something that I want to follow up on. When I'm done with this example, I can move back up the ladder as either a chart or a grid. If I want to look at another item and drill down from the grid, I'll simply double click on the row of that item to get the underlying details. If I'm completely done with the object, or if I want to move back to the top, I can do that, return to the chart, or quickly return back to the page that it came from and take a look at some of the other objects on that page. The second object is similar in concept in terms of the drill down. In this case, we start at the branch level, and these specific legends indicate that blue is gross margin commission cost this year to date, green is gross margin commission cost last year to date, and orange is the difference. So it's easy to see that location 10 is down significantly, about 400,000 in this case. And if we click on that orange data point, then we can drill into that again to see what reps are down, and then perhaps what customers that rep lost the sales with. For each customer, we can drill down further to get the product group breakdown, and then from product group, we can drill into the actual items to find the underlying root cause of the shrink and hopefully take action on that item. Again, like our previous example, we can toggle between chart and grid at any level. Now, one of the neat things about the grid is that when we're charting, we might want to just look at a couple key indicators represented again by our legend. But when we toggle to the grid, we can see all the underlying statistics from the related data set. Now, in this case, we'll get not only the breakdown in margin, but also the breakdown in sales, units, fill rate, and so forth. So a key concept in ExecuKeys is that we can easily create ExecuKeys objects from practically any web query report in just a few minutes. To see a clearer example of that relationship, let's just take a closer look at the title of this particular object. In this case, EKCT Sales Drill Down. Now, if I look into our web query module, I can find a report of the same name. And within that report, we can see how the columns were laid out and defined. The drill down sequence is simply controlled by how the columns are ordered in the dimension list. So in this particular example, we go from company through sales rep, customer, product group, all the way down to the items. Now let's say, for example, that in your company, perhaps something like supplier might be a meaningful dimension to drill through. So we can simply alter this report and therefore the related ExecuKeys presentation simply by changing the columns in the order in the underlying report. So to add supplier to the sequence, I'll simply go to the supplier section. I'll grab the supplier ID, or I could use name if I wanted. And then I want to think about where I want to put supplier in the drill down sequence. So I'll move that column up. And in my case, I might want to see supplier between the product group and the item. So I'll leave it there. I'll save that object. I'll overwrite the previous report. I'll return to ExecuKeys. I'll move up a level. I'll right-click on the object. I'll rerun the underlying report. Now our results have been refreshed. And now if I drill into product group, we'll have a breakdown by supplier as well. From the supplier, we can further break it down to items or whatever we had in our drill down sequence. When I'm done with my analysis, I can move up the ladder or return to the page and look at some of my other objects. To summarize, I can have as many pages as I want in various data topics, each secured by user and group, so people only see what we want them to see, what we need them to see. You could use various charting styles. You can mix and match presentations using any combination of charts, gauges, or grids, and basically decide how you find it's most meaningful to render information and share it with the critical people in your organization. Now, some of our customers will even share information with their customers, keeping in mind that this is a browser-based app, and given the proper security permissions, that customers can even look at their own key performance indicators, however you choose to share that with them if you desire. Thanks again for your interest in ExecuKeys. We've barely scratched the surface, please let us know if you'd be interested in seeing a demo, and we can show you the complete diversity of the types of information that are available and how easy it is for non-technical users to, again, personalize the appearance of their dashboards with the kind of information that they're most interested. Thanks again. We look forward to talking to you at your convenience.